Australian Open 2026, Carlos Alcaraz, Aryna Sabalenka will headline singles draw. World number 1 Carlos Alcaraz and women's world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka will headline the Australian Open draw after being confirmed as the top seeds for the 2026 edition of the season-opening Grand Slam at Melbourne Park. World number 1 Carlos Alcaraz and women's world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka will headline the Australian Open draw after being confirmed as the top seeds for the 2026 edition of the season-opening Grand Slam at Melbourne Park. The main draw is set to get underway on January 18th, with the world's best players converging on Melbourne for the first major tournament of the year. Alcaraz enters the Australian Open as the men's number 1 seed following a stellar 2025 season, during which he consolidated his position at the top of the ATP rankings. The Spaniard will be aiming to add a maiden Australian Open title to his growing Grand Slam collection. Defending champion Jannik Sinner has been seeded second, setting up the possibility of a blockbuster final should both players navigate their respective halves of the draw. Germany's Alexander Zverev is the third seed, while 10-time Melbourne champion Novak Djokovic begins his 21st Australian Open campaign as the fourth seed. Australian Open 2026, Alcaraz and Sabalenka set to lead a new era down under. The tennis world awakens each January to a spectacle unrivaled in its blend of athletic genius, raw emotion, and modern sporting drama, the Australian Open. In 2026, that familiar thrill returns as the first Grand Slam of the year unfurls across Melbourne Park, casting a spotlight on Carlos Alcaraz and Aryna Sabalenka, newly confirmed as the top seeds in the men's and women's singles draws respectively. As players from every corner of the globe descend upon the blue courts of Rod Laver Arena, Melbourne's summer heat becomes the backdrop to potentially defining chapters in the careers of two of tennis's brightest talents. But beyond the headlines, beyond the seedings, lies a fascinating tapestry of storylines, history, aspiration, and the timeless human quest for greatness. A Grand Slam with infinite storylines. The Australian Open has long been known as the Happy Slam, a tournament celebrated for its spirited crowds, unpredictable moments, and the beginning of a new tennis calendar that resets hopes and ambitions. For many, it's a chance for redemption. For others, it's a stage to cement a legacy. Carlos Alcaraz, Spain's Renaissance man. At just 22 years old, Carlos Alcaraz carries both the weight of expectation and the freshness of youthful fire. His blend of blistering speed, creative shot-making, and relentless aggression has captivated fans worldwide, with 6 Grand Slam titles already under his belt. Now, seeded number 1 at the Australian Open, Alcaraz faces both promise and pressure. Melbourne has, to date, been one of the few missing trophies from his slam collection. A curious wrinkle in the resume of a player otherwise near the summit of tennis greatness. Yet this year feels different. As the fresh seasons of 2026 dawn, his form has been scintillating, and his hunger unmistakable. To many, this is more than another tournament. It's a chance for Alcaraz to fill a gap in his legacy, to chase not just a title, but career completeness. And in a sport that venerates both achievement and narrative arcs, that chase is as compelling as the tennis itself. Aryna Sabalenka, power, precision, and purpose. On the women's side, Aryna Sabalenka stands atop the singles seedings with ferocity and poise, a testament to years of hard-earned consistency. As the reigning world number 1 and a multi-slam champion, she has transformed her game over time into one that balances overwhelming force with sharpened tactical instincts. Sabalenka's journey, one marked by powerful serves, explosive baseline strikes, and steely competitive instincts, finds its latest apex in Melbourne, where she is widely considered among the favorites to lift the Daphne-accursed trophy once again. With her signature blend of mental grit and physical dominance, she pursues not just victory, but affirmation of her place among the sport's all-time greats. The atmosphere, heat, anticipation, and global excitement. Melbourne in January is a city transformed. Cafes spill over with international accents, street art fades beneath tennis posters, and the scent of sunscreen and zeal hangs in the air. From hardcore fans braving early queues to families experiencing their first match, The Australian Open is one of the few sporting events that feels like a festival of humanity as much as it is a tournament. The night matches, bathed in floodlights, punctuated by thunderous serves, demand their own folklore. Early mornings bring the quieter promise of breakout stars and underdogs eager to upset order. Side courts, too, hum with passion as lesser-known faces battle for careers and recognition. And this year, with a prize money pool of $111.5 million Australian dollars, a record, the stakes have never been higher. Beyond the headlines, deeper themes in play: legacy versus emergence. At one end of the court stands players like Novak Djokovic, the all-time great, eyeing yet another chapter in an extraordinary career. The Serbian legend, with his meticulous artistry and chilling competitiveness, may be chasing new records even as the landscape of the sport evolves around him. At the other end are rising names and hungry challengers. Jannik Sinner, the defending men's champion, hoping to be the first since Djokovic to win 3 consecutive Australian Opens. Iga Swiatek, with her rich blend of craft and discipline, and young guns ready to ignite a new era with boldness and flair. This duality, of legacy competing with emergence, underpins much of tennis's allure in 2026. Global representation and diverse aspirations. The draw is more than a roster, it's a microcosm of tennis's global sweep. From the beaten clay fighters of Europe to the power-hitting Americans, and the spirited veterans from Asia and Oceania, every corner of the planet lays claim to its contenders and dreamers. And for Australian hopefuls like Alex de Minaur, the roar of a home crowd isn't just ambience, it's a force. Few phenomena in tennis equate to the energy of a supportive stadium behind its native sun, especially on the hard courts of Melbourne Park. The moment of truth, what awaits on the courtsmen's narrative threads. A hungry Alcaraz, striving for that elusive Australian Open title. Sinner's bid for historic three-peat dominance. Djokovic's last dance. Or perhaps one more chapter of extraordinary resilience. A field of fierce competitors ready to derail expectations at every turn. In a sport where momentum can pivot on a single breakpoint, these storylines promise unforgettable games and heart-stopping finishes. Women's saga of power and precision. Sabalenka aiming for her 3rd AO crown. The dynamic swirl of contenders, Swiatek, Gauff, and Anisimova, all possessing weapons and willpower. Defending champion Madison Keys, a reminder that Grand Slams offer poetic twists where past glory isn't a guarantee, but a springboard. The women's draw brims with stylistic contrasts, force versus finesse, patience versus aggression, each match a small war of attrition and artistry.